We have 3 leadership labs. The first one, first level, is called Essentials Lab. It's ideal for first-line leaders, supervisors, step-ups, people who maybe act as supervisor, but aren't officially a supervisor. Also people like team leaders, project leaders, anyone that needs to get work done through other people, gives work direction, either if they have authority or not. That's our kind of entry-level class. It's 2 days, it's foundational, but it's a nice, robust, but compact experience. Our next level class is called Accelerator Lab, and the name tells what it is. It's to accelerate a career, whether someone is a individual contributor looking to do more, looking to expand into leadership, maybe even taking on a different type of role, a lateral move that's going to stretch them in some way. That's a 4-day class. We teach it every Tuesday for 4 weeks. There are folks in there anywhere from industrial manufacturing roles to more business roles, even healthcare in that role, and nonprofits. It's a lot about influence in that class. Typically, our participants are really good at getting things done, but it's the people aspect and the influence aspect that needs some training. Yeah. And then our highest level experience is called Strategy Lab. And again, just like the name, it helps people to be more strategic, think more broadly. It's designed for people who typically already have some leadership experience or very high senior individual contributor role, lots of impact and influence that they're having across the organization. It's going to help them just be better at it, think differently about their role in the organization, who they serve, how they impact for the long term in organization. That class is 5 days. We teach that on Thursdays for 5 weeks. With each one of our classes, we ask folks to think about, what do you want to take from this experience? No, don't just come to class. Really think about what is meaningful for you. What can you take back to work and put into place immediately? And they create a development plan. Our Accelerator Lab and Strategy Lab comes with a 360 feedback assessment and an individual coaching engagement where they really get to see what are the people who work with me and around me, what is their feedback about my leadership skills? What are my opportunities to grow? What relationships are important that I need to form? Are there any projects or special events that I really need to get in gear for? Mm-hmm. So each one of those labs, we call them labs because in those workshops, it's not just lecture. They get to actually experience the skills that we're talking about. And we make it fun and engaging with videos, articles, small group discussions. We do role play of scenarios, real work-life scenarios, bring in a couple of local actors, and they kind of, make things interesting, sometimes make things difficult for the participants, but it's a lot of fun. A lot of people are really nervous about that aspect of the program, but once they see the value and the benefit, they'll say, I'm glad I did that. I didn't really want to do that, but I'm glad I did that. And the actors that we work with are super fun, super talented, and so it just ends up being a real life but fun experience for everybody because the coaches like it too.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It sounds like there was a lot of thought and intention that went into how these 3 distinct classes were formulated. Can you tell me a little bit more about the model that we came up with? Were they to address gaps that we were seeing in different industries or across organizations?
Absolutely. I think our Accelerator Lab was originally developed back in the day for a healthcare organization who was really wanting their nurses, their nurse managers, to get some training and development on the leadership of people. And then they started to realize, hey, why don't we take our nurses who have potential or who have expressed a desire to move into leadership, why don't we have them take the class so they know these are going to be the expectations. These are highly qualified nurses, but managing other nurses is a whole different skill set. So we've had success there, and by success I mean truly developing people for that step. But also some people have said, that's not something that I want. And so they realize that might not be for me, maybe there's something else for me. So that's why Accelerator Lab came into being and targeting that, but of course it expanded as we realized how impactful it was, how having this experience at that point in your career where you're really good at what you do and you're highly thought of, but you have that maybe extra something that enables you have the potential to do more. So that class is excellent for that type of employee, that type of person. Strategy Lab, one thing we realized is people who are really good at what they do, including managers, tend to get mired in the day-to-day. That's when problems surface, is every day. And the role of a leader, a manager, is to take care of problems. And what we were finding is those folks, department managers and so forth, were not really prepared or didn't have experience with, okay, well, what about the long term? You have people that should be handling the day-to-day, even this week, this month, who's thinking about next year, who's thinking about 3 to 5 years from now. And so it's designed to get people truly out of that more reactive day-to-day and on to thinking about what do we as an organization need to do today, and how do I lead that effort so that we are viable and successful 3 to 5 years from now. And so all of the activities and the topics are kind of souped up from the Accelerator Lab. Accelerator Lab is still a lot focused on individual and team, whereas Strategy Lab takes that to organizational level and sometimes outside of your organization to the industry or to the world. For Essentials Lab, and I mentioned that last because that's our newest class. We developed that I think about 6-ish years ago, and we've been thinking about it a lot, but we also got our clients, specifically those who attended Strategy Lab, wanting something for their people, for their first line leaders, for people who had that potential to be a first line leader. And they approached us and said, look, we need something probably shorter, but super foundational to first line leadership. And so we developed that one. And that's really for folks who have never supervised people. Sometimes we get folks in there who have been supervisors, but it's a great refresher, or maybe they never got any development in that and have been maybe making mistakes or have been less happy in their role. So we start with foundational things that individual contributors need development in. In fact, it's really good for all professionals, anybody who works, anybody who's an adult. We talk about self-awareness, communication, your composure, your professional and leadership presence. And then on day 2, we start talking about, okay, you're going to have to start interacting with people, giving them feedback, paying attention to the performance of people other than yourself. Mm-hmm. And you also need to start getting work done through other people, not doing everything yourself. And so distinctly different levels, distinctly different target audience, and we've made them different from each other such that if you, throughout your career, you could move through all 3. Not right away, but at different stages of your career, you get ready for each one. And I think it's a great curriculum.
Leadership labs, just even using the word labs, sounds like that's a place for you to experiment. It's not just to sit and listen. It's to actually put theory into practice. Can you tell me more about why it's so important to teach a leadership lab in that way?
It's important because, so many of our folks, they've been in school, right? They've been in school, they've been high school, college, postgraduate, so they understand what formal teaching is. And not that they're opposed to it, but this is a different type of experience. So, at Success Labs, our labs are meant to be experiential. So you don't just hear the theory, although that's important. The model, the theory, the best practice is we say, okay, this is how you go do that at work, right? Because everything sounds great, right? I can sit in a class and they talk about the value of motivating others. And of course that sounds really great, but then I go back to my desk and I'm like, okay, that sounded really great. What do I do? And so that's where we come in and we say, these are ideas for what you can actually go back and do. And so, as coaches, as facilitators, we bring our backgrounds, our experience to Success Labs. And so you'll hear us share our own experiences, our own stories, including our own failures, when we did something that maybe didn't work that well. I think people learn a lot more about when you shared how you failed than when you share how you've succeeded. So I think we're really open about that. I think it makes it engaging and fun and funny. And so people come in there realizing, while this might be hard, because I'm not going to say that these skills are easy, they still might be difficult, but I can do that. If I want to be a better communicator, that's such a huge thing, right? Oh, communicate better. But if somebody breaks down that process and says, hey, one way that you can be a better listener is turn your phone over so you're not distracted. We can all do that. Turn over the phone. Very small, simple, applicable thing. That's how you can become a better listener. And that's a very small example or simple example, but we have examples for small, actionable, practical things for every leadership skill that you can imagine. We can tell you, here's how to do that.
So it sounds like they're designed to not only teach you the thing, but will give you the space and the safe space to practice those things and then to be able to build your confidence to be able to enact them when you get back to your own desk.
Absolutely. I mean, we keep our classes small, a lot for that reason, so that people do feel, okay, this is a small group of people. We do activities where they start to become comfortable with each other, and then we kind of slowly warm them up to really opening up about what are their challenges, what are their issues, share those appropriately, and then start to, in real time, apply these concepts to what they might be experiencing. And, one thing that I really like to do that's important to me is to let people know that leadership is an action. We demonstrate leadership every day through small actions. You're going to mess up, right? I mean, anybody who's never made a mistake, in my opinion, is not trying hard enough. No perfect people, no perfect leaders. And we say, you know what? Not only is that okay, that's normal, right? And so go practice. Let's practice here where it's kind of fun and light and low pressure. Let's get develop some muscle around that. And then you'll feel more comfortable going and doing that back at work. So, either through role play of situations, sometimes we will do kind of a case study where we give them a scenario and have them talk it through, articles that they'll read and they'll share. How does this article, how is it meaningful to me? How have I seen this situation in my life? And how was it handled and how could it be handled? So it truly is a lab where people can come in and do and practice and experiment and then get feedback from us as facilitators and coaches, but also from the cohort, from the other people who are in the class. And sometimes they really develop some lasting relationships and learn from each other.
You mentioned that our leadership labs are fun and funny. Can you tell me more about the fun that you have? I know you are a very fun individual. I'd love to hear about the fun that you inject in the class because it doesn't have to always be so serious and stuffy.
No, it doesn't. I enjoy having fun. I enjoy telling jokes. I enjoy putting a spin on words or situations. And I look to my career as a supervisor and a manager to pull out stories that I think while they might be unusual in the detail, they really illustrate a common thing, whether it's messing up when you're trying to give somebody feedback, or as a supervisor, making mistakes early in terms of leading my team versus being one of the crowd. So I look for stories that are both illustrative of the concept, but that are also interesting and funny, maybe goofy sometimes. We let people's personalities shine. We get them to open up enough with either self-awareness activities or other discussions where, again, you start to let your guard down and realize that everybody's here for a purpose, and which is to develop in some important skills at work. And I think the probably, the one thing that makes it fun is that we take development and leadership seriously, but we have a very realistic understanding of people and leaders and the stuff that goes on at work, which, the truth is funny. So yeah, we tap into that.
The leadership labs are small and intimate, and it sounds like one of the things that is a byproduct of that is that the participants realize same problems, different company, or same problems, different industry. How can having that shared experience help reinforce what they're learning as well?
I think that, while each individual is a unique person, right? There's no two people that exactly the same. Interactions between people are pretty common. There's conflict, there's various forms of conflict, whether that's tension around the work, whether it's personality clashes. There are, people who are maybe less qualified for the job. We have, your workhorses, all of that. So each person tends to come to class with, my situation is different, right? There's nobody that knows what I'm feeling, what I'm going through. And it can be an isolating place, particularly for a new leader. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things is they come and they realize, while, my team is maybe special, what I'm going through is not uncommon. And the experiences of other people, how they've handled it or what they're going through, I think that there's just a sense of, I'm not alone, and there are ways to do something about this. When I first became a first line supervisor, I remember feeling that if my employees were not performing or acting up, it was my fault. And it was not something that I wanted other people to know about, something to be hidden. And what I learned pretty quickly was that if I'm a supervisor, and my employees are acting up or not performing, that's part of the job. It's part of the job. And it's not my fault. It's just, that's what happens. What am I going to do about it? Mm-hmm. And really to highlight those issues to my leadership and say, here's what's going on and here's what I'm doing about it. Because, if employees didn't act up and not perform, we wouldn't need supervisors. So, that's the role. So I think that understanding, you are going to have those problems. You're not leading a small team of yourself, right? And so that's the other thing, is so many of our students come to us with, they've been promoted or somewhat elevated, and now they are leading a team, not of themselves, of people who are, less hardworking possibly, or sometimes more driven, less trained, all of that stuff. And so you have to adapt that to, how am I going to lead? How am I going to lead these folks? And so they hear it, right? They know it from themselves, and then as they open up, they start to hear it from their fellow participants. And I think that there's a sense of, I'm not alone, and there are things that I can do to address these things.
You have individuals that come to our leadership labs. Mm-hmm. But I would imagine that there is benefit that they take back to their teams and groups and companies. So can you tell me more about how our leadership labs can help the entire organization, not just the one individual who comes?
Well, by nature, we have leaders in our class, people who influence and impact more than just themselves. So in that way, automatically, there's an organizational impact. But I think the other thing is they begin to understand their coworkers and their employees better. And they realize everyone's got strengths and weaknesses. How do I tap into the strengths of my peers, my employees, even in some cases my bosses? And how do I do those things that are not only helpful to that individual, but that in that naturally is going to help the team, is going to elevate the team. Then they also go back, and I think they have a renewed sense of there's help available. There are solutions, there are ideas that can help all of us be happier, more satisfied, higher performing, more effective with each other, particularly in those things where the topic are about conflict and relationships. They can expand their impact and their influence just through being better leaders, being more impactful.
What would you say to someone who's considering signing up for one of the leadership labs but might be nervous to do so, or maybe even don't feel like they belong in the room?
Interesting. I think if they're nervous, if they're nervous about either the activities or maybe they, like you said, they don't feel like they belong, they don't see themselves as a leader. I find this a lot in Essentials Lab, which is that basic leadership class. A lot of times they're thrust into these positions and they don't, they kind of identify as just, well, I'm just, my people work for me. And, I tell them, no. They say my people work with me. And I say, no, they work for you. You're the boss now, you're the leader, and you've earned that position. Somebody has seen that potential in you, and you have demonstrated skills, whether with people or your technical expertise, that has elevated you to that position. So it's time for you then to get some formal development, get some ideas for what you're doing. If they're nervous about, will I fit in? Am I ready for this? Then, we have an introductory call before for each participant so that they meet us, they get a better understanding of what they're going to experience. So hopefully that sets them a little at ease. But they often do show up with, bigger eyes and a little more, reticence about what they're doing. We start every workshop with activities to make them more comfortable, to get them to know us and each other. And, through that process, they, I think, overwhelmingly realize this is a place for me. I can learn something here. Even if somebody has 5 more years of experience than they do, I think they see themselves and they're like, oh, that person, used to be in my position and look what they're doing now. Or that person who's been doing it for 5 years is having some of the same challenges that I'm having today. And they're expressing, that it's difficult, right? It can be scary to go and sit down and have a difficult conversation with someone, and you can be 5-10 years into leadership and naturally still not really enjoy doing that sort of thing. So, I think we just kind of take it down to a workable, manageable, practical level pretty quickly.
If someone were interested in signing up for one of the leadership labs, what's the next step?
They can go on our website, and we have some buttons and links where they can send us a message, and it goes to the appropriate person who will reach out to them. We'll make sure they understand the dates, the commitment. They will introduce themselves, get their direct manager involved, and we'll start a conversation and make sure that they're a fit. That's one thing that we want people to come to the right experience. for their benefit. We don't want them coming into strategy lab without any understanding of, or really any opportunity to have that kind of impact. And we certainly don't want someone who's been, an experienced leader who has some of these foundational things, has done those pretty well to get put, in that class. So click on the button, give us a call, send us an email. But we love for folks to come to our classes. We think it's a great experience. We think they get a robust, fun, impactful experience, and they become big fans of Success Labs and of their coaches.